Okay, so my plan was to introduce all of you, like bios, and then turn over the floor to you. I can leave out the bios.
No, that's good.
Okay.
And then, I just like asking you all. Personally, revive. Good. That's good.
It's a nice personality shirt.
Thrift store.
Which thrift store? Thrifty Nifty?
This one was this was from one in Ottawa, I believe.
Oh!
Value Village.
Oh, that sounds like my kind of place.
Value Village, and then
That's fair. I mean, that's reasonable. That means that your clothes are old, which is good. Just means you're not contributing. Oh yes, and here you are.
And here I am.
How crazy.
What a coincidence. Awesome. Should we?
Yeah, have at it. Take your seats, grab water, anything
Oh yeah, I
you
need water.
We'll probably get started here pretty soon.
Okay. So you've got red showing, it's muted.
Okay. So you just up and down.
Yeah, that's all right. I was just gonna get a cup of water.
And we're done at 4:30.
Oh,
Is that right?
Good question. Let me check. I think that it is 4:30. Where was it? Do you have a copy of the schedule?
Yes.
Is there one? Here, oh, there's. There. Oh, ask Leanne if we can find Leanne. What time are they done? I know.
3:45.
At 4:30. Yeah, David, you guys are done at 4:30ish.
Okay.
You have about an hour and 15. That's not how math works. 45.
45.
It's been a long day.
45 minutes.
Yeah, but if we start a little bit later, I think you should be okay.
We'll see.
In my humble opinion, which I was gonna say, I mean, just to take over.
Because I'll probably go for like half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're going to give it just a few more minutes to see if anybody else filters in. Okay, good.
We got a few more. Yeah.
Check 1, 2. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope everybody has been enjoying their sessions today and all of the different lessons that we've learned. I know that I very much so enjoyed the Fluid Verse workshop. Shout out to anybody who also went to that. I'd like to recognize and thank all of the hard work and the amazing turnout that has made this conference what it is. We would not be here without all of you guys as well. We now have the opportunity to hear from an incredible panel of individuals, all of whom focus their reporting efforts on climate change. They'll share their insider perspective as to climate story trends and how they seek out hope in a beat that often forces them to face hard truths. We are fortunate to live in a rural community that is such a big range of climate reporting across different platforms, from radio and television to online and print. Our panelists have been dedicated to bringing together stories from across the North Country. So David Sommerstein, who will be moderating the panel, is the news director at North Country Public Radio, where he oversees the station's news, coverage, and leads a team of reporters dedicated to providing in-depth local journalism with years of experience in broadcast and investigative reporting. I hope not. Bridget Shirvell is a freelance journalist and the author of Parenting in a Climate Crisis, a book that explores the challenges and opportunities of raising children in an era of climate change. With a focus on environmental issues, social justice, and family dynamics, Bridget's writing delves into the emotional and practical aspects of navigating climate concerns while parenting. Caroline Wheeler is NCPR's St. Lawrence Valley reporter. She's covered rural communities across the country, including in Wyoming and Iowa. Before coming to NCPR, Catherine hosted All Things Considered at Iowa Public Radio. Mike Lynch is a climate reporter for the Adirondack Explorer, where he covers environmental issues, climate change, and sustainability in the Adirondack region. With a passion for environmental journalism, Mike investigates the impacts of climate change on local communities, wildlife, and ecosystems, highlighting both challenges and solutions. So I'd now like to turn things over to David, who will be moderating our panel.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'd like to start by thanking the drink tickets for keeping you all here. Thank you very much. No, seriously, thank you for sticking it out through this amazing conference. Thank you very much to Sunita and Jen and Elle and everybody from Acorn for just a wealth of information and knowledge from so many people. I've learned so much today, and I'm sure you all have. All that stuff that you learned today gets filtered to the public in a lot of cases through people like us, right? And we're going to try and unpack a little bit how we seek out those stories, how we've seen stories change, how we try to communicate to the public, and what we see is the future. And also, you know, a thing that that Al just mentioned is really how to find like hope through and communicate to audiences and keep audiences interested through what can also often be a lot of bleak reporting. So I'm going to start. Hello, panel. You've all been introduced, so we can just roll right in. I want to just start by having you each just talk a little bit about how you were drawn to climate reporting. Catherine, you want to start?
Yes. So I cover general assignment for NCPR, but also climate change. But I think they go hand in hand because climate change isn't just about the environment or science anymore. It covers so many parts of our lives, pretty much every part. And I'm really drawn to finding those stories that are impacting in different parts and unexpected parts of our lives. It gives me a lot to do. It gives us a lot to think about, and is a great opportunity to like create intersectionality between all of these things that we care about.
Mike?
So I became the climate reporter at the Explorer about 2 months ago, and I was drawn to it because, I've always been drawn to environmental reporting, but more recently I thought it was an interesting beat to get into because it does affect every aspect of society up here in community, every aspect of the Adirondacks. I mean, you can write about wildlife, you can write about communities, you can write about farming. And so I just thought it was a way to cover the Adirondacks. It was extremely interesting. And so I'm excited to do that.
And Bridget, and I think Bridget needs a mic. We have to share mics.
Hi. So I came to climate reporting really from food systems reporting. I'm from Connecticut. I grew up in my state's town that has the last commercial fishing fleet in the state. So from a very young age, I was into food issues. And then after I had my daughter about 6 years ago, that my reporting really switched to focus on all aspects of environmental reporting. You know, to echo what has already been said, climate change is the biggest story happening on the planet. It's going to affect everything that we do, and it will continue to for a very long time.
So I want to ask you a little bit about like trends in climate change reporting, but I want to start with just like a little tiny story. Like maybe 20 years ago at NCPR, Michael Mann, who's sort of one of the pioneering climatologists, or among the pioneering climatologists. Do I have that right? For those who know Michael Mann, yeah, good. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. He came and was interviewed. It was at St. Lawrence University for a visit, and we interviewed him at the station, and then after he sat us down, we had a little session with him, and he's like, "You guys have to stop with the is climate change real thing." And this was a long time ago, and we've all kind of, we're all past that, and I think all major media are past that. But it made me think a lot about just how our framing for climate stories is A, so important, and B, like really changes. Like we're talking a lot about adaptation now, and I'm already thinking as we've been doing a climate series all year, and I've been thinking about like what's the next frame that we want to think about. So I want to ask you all, and I know Mike, why don't we start with you, because you were talking about when we were talking last week about how you were covering Hurricane Irene, right? So that's something and a moment that's familiar to a lot of us here. Talk about your experience covering that and how sort of things have evolved.
So I remember covering Hurricane Irene in August 2011. I remember being at my house, just reading the Plattsburgh Press Republican on the Sunday afternoon and hearing about a storm over in the Keene Valley area that sounded pretty serious. I was in Saranac Lake. We were just getting some rain. It didn't seem like a big deal. So the next morning, I got up at 5:30 and went over to the bridge where the ski jumps is, and there was piles of trees in the water, and so I just started to see all the destruction that was there, and so there was then a lot of reporting around this storm at that point, and it was kind of like a flare, like, oh wait, we should start thinking about climate change. Then we reported on it, and I kept expecting, I'd been reporting that we're going to have more storms in the future because of climate change, but then over the years we didn't have too many more storms. But then I recall in 2019 we had the Halloween storm, and that affected like central Adirondacks and the southern Adirondacks. Had those big storms, and then recent years we've had a lot of storms like Beryl and Debbie, and the one on July 10th the year before Beryl. And so I think what's happened over time is that just people like everybody here has come to recognize, that these storms are going to occur, and they're occurring because of climate change. But it's also impacting like the way people are reacting to me when I'm interviewing them. They're more, they acknowledge it more. Supervisors throughout the park, the Adirondack associations of towns and villages, that was that they discussed that at their December meeting. So I've just, it just seems like there's more of a recognition now, just general overall throughout the Adirondacks.
Bridget, you were talking about sort of socioeconomic and cultural shifts in your community that really sort of drove you to be interested in this. How has your reporting sort of shifted as you go along? You talked about like seeing the climate story in like everyday reporting in all kinds of things.
So I think that I'll say, like, as a whole, I think the news media is doing a much better job of kind of making that link between climate change and extreme weather. To some extent, we still like get it wrong. The wildfires out in LA were a great example of that. There are so many news reports that called it a natural disaster, and I'm like, stop calling it a natural disaster. There's nothing natural about what's happening, and saying the words natural disaster kind of lets people off the hook. It gets rid of the blame of corporations and politicians. But I think that while we've done a better job of that, we haven't done a great job of making the little day-to-day connections. Forever chemicals and cookware, we're still kind of coming at that really from a health aspect, which is super important in how we're going to get most people aware of it. But we fail to think about, okay, well, now you have to get rid of your cookware, but how do we actually do that? What's happening to those forever chemicals when they end up in the landfill?
Catherine, I see you nodding your head. And how, we talk about at NCPR about including, in those storms and stuff, like including language that is connecting, the natural disaster to the climate science behind it.
Yes, that is a big part of connecting those things, but also thinking about the other ways and the long-term impacts as well. I'm thinking of going out onto farms and seeing the changes that they have to make because of climate change and making sure that those are really clear to the audience, because it hasn't always been that way, and you don't really have to negotiate as much with the people you're interviewing of like, well, it might not actually be because of this, who knows? It's much easier to be more direct, and I think we still have ways to go in integrating it, like Bridget is saying, into other beats and other stories, basically.
Let me ask, let me ask any of you, how do you perceive like your audience is, hearing this climate news, and not just hearing, like, what's their knowledge level? Like, what's your sense of that?
I think what I try to do, which you edit them, so let me know if I'm succeeding, is to not be repetitive, but to really be direct about the situation and remind people these are the instances. It's going to get warmer and wetter in New York, and give examples so that you can latch on to the experiences and the effects and the reality that you see in front of you anyway, instead of making it scientific.
Mike and Bridget, do you hear people, like the feedback you get, like people wanting more of this kind of reporting, different kinds of this reporting?
I think the type of reporting that people want from us now is solutions reporting. Seems to be very popular. People, there's a number of reasons for that. I think one is people have exhaustion with bad news now, and they kind of avoid those stories. But it's just, it's a proactive way to let people know how to deal with these situations, and I think they appreciate that. And it's kind of that's different than what's happened in the past. I don't remember that, there being solution stories 20 years ago. Maybe one of the few solution stories I did was when Jerry Jenkins came out with his book, Adirondack, a climate change in the Adirondacks in 2010, and he kind of outlined all those solutions. But, over the years, in the years right after that, we didn't really highlight those solutions too much. But solutions is actually like a core part of what we do now, and we even travel to other states to find out what they're doing there, bring that information back, and trying to educate people here in the Adirondacks on how they can do things better.
Bridget, I know you've reported on like climate being talked about in like children's TV and you know, in with playgrounds, and you know, where do you go for where do you seek out climate stories?
I really seek out climate stories from the questions that people are asking me. I think because, you know, I've been doing this work for a while, I get questions all the time from people in my community that are like, hey, what type of laundry detergent should I like use? Like, what is the most beneficial thing to do? What should I be eating? I think that there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of people know that this is an issue and they want to help, but they're so overwhelmed with what to do on the day to day, which is why they're seeking out solution stories, but also just like very practical advice.
Yeah, practical advice. Let's talk a little bit about like doing this reporting in rural areas. You know, we all live in rural areas. What is sort of the advantages? You know, how is covering things here different? You know, what opportunities, what are sort of the challenges of covering climate change in a rural area?
Well, I think, you know, Kurt Steger outlined it this morning. I mean, talking about, you know, the identity of, you know, these small towns is often very closely associated with winter. I mean, look at Saranac Lake. And you know, because the culture there is around winter. You know, you have the ice palace, you have, you know, skiing throughout the winter. So, you know, it affects that aspect. But here we're in the Adirondacks also. I mean, it affects the wildlife, it affects recreation, it affects tourism. So, I mean, that's one of the challenges too, because you have to think about how you're going to incorporate climate change into all these stories. You can't, because you don't want to exhaust people too. You don't want to put that in every story, so you have to be careful in how you choose.
I find it really hard, yeah, that like you could just do every story about climate change, really. Yeah. Yeah, no, go ahead. We No, we actually have a section that's going to be about covering climate with the Trump administration. We are getting. We might as well let's go there right now. First of all, well, hold on. We'll pause a second. Covering in rural areas, Catherine.
Yes, so I've been covering a lot of solar development that's happening in St. Lawrence County, and some of that is large-scale development that's managed and approved by ORES, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, which is created to kind of be able to move these large-scale energy products forward without having to get involved in the nitty-gritty of every town and village that they want to put this in, or companies want to. And I'm seeing a lot of tension between local governments and local people who feel left behind by the state being able to make these decisions. And that is just going to continue as the state pushes to create more renewable energy, and they need rural places to put these things and to create more development.
It's like a 21st century version of like the extractive resources kind of issue that, you know, that the North Country has dealt with for years.
Yes, and I think something I cannot stop thinking about ever is Sue Powers from Clarkson, and yeah, everyone. I was talking to her kind of about this tension, And she brought up a really great point, which is, yes, like you can be upset this is happening in your backyard, but think about the things that have happened in West Virginia and in coal mining communities and the scale of the problem that has created. And also the scale of climate change is going to be worse than what happens in your field because they wanted to put some solar panels. You are worried about the birds that might be displaced, but we might not have birds, coming.
And that's a hard argument for some
It's so
people
hard,
to swallow.
and it's so difficult
And
when you
real.
feel like you don't have all the power to make those decisions and take the full amount of time that you want to.
Yes, but the state, you can explain that.
Yeah, so
In brief.
It depends on the size of the facility, and then towns, villages, municipalities have the ability to make input, but they can supersede local zoning laws. With certain things. There's tension.
As a good radio person, I'm going to forward promo that we are going to have a Q&A session coming up in just a little bit. So it's okay. I should have done that earlier. That's on me. It's on me.
I love the passion, though.
Love the passion. And we'll also, if you want to pitch us stories, like we'd really like that. We get stories from you. So we'll have that session in just a minute. Okay, so let's talk about the Trump administration situation here. How are you, and what kind of questions are you asking right now?
So I think we had a Google Doc where we were preparing our answers, and I said I would answer this question, but I also feel like I'm probably not the best person for it, right? Like, I'm a freelancer. I'm sending my little emails out to editors being like, please let me write something, and preferably I want it to not be about Trump because I don't want to do those reaction pieces. So I think the challenge really for the news media right now is how do we balance all of it? There's so much information coming at, all of you every single day, and everything feels like it's an emergency. How do we kind of make that distinction between what is actually important and what is just Trump thinking about doing something that we probably don't need to react to right away?
And there's a lot of fear, we're getting a lot of feedback of a lot of fear from people, where people are saying, you have to cover this like right now, yesterday. And a lot of it, we don't know the effects quite yet. And, what we do best is reporting on, what is. So we're looking at, to answer your question, like, we are talking and would want to hear from all of you about, what is happening to climate programs that you're involved in or projects. And a big question is how the state, it's a question that we have, you asked that yourself, how the state is positioning itself vis-a-vis, federal pressures and where that money comes from. And following that money trail is something we would want to find out.
Something that changed my perspective recently, we're a part of NPR's climate collaborative, so we can meet weekly with NPR editors and reporters on their desk, which is a wealth of information. They were talking to us regarding Trump administration situations, which was their reporters can't even figure out what the scale of the problem is. They have no idea. They can't get an answer from the feds. The departments don't know. The individuals don't know. And so they're relying on member station reporting to see who in all of these communities across the country are getting effective. They're compiling all of that information. They're asking us to send it to them. And then they can take it and filter out, okay, like here's this program and this program. And then they can go ask questions to federal government employees who have more direct power. And they just have more information than to go on because it's not super clear. They have a whole country to figure out. But we have the ability to kind of break it down to even smaller chunks. But if you know of something, please come talk to me later.
Yeah, the data points are appearing in real time, like very, very quickly and very, the patterns are just sort of forming themselves. Mike, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to agree with what was said. That we cover the Trump issues from the ground up. Cover it locally, obviously, but we also kind of look. We were talking the other day in a meeting where I work about some potential solution stories. About, I know this whole situation's unprecedented, but there are some storylines that have happened in the past. Such as nonprofits losing federal funding. It's not unheard of that, in years past, somebody, started up a nonprofit and most of their funding was federal. So you can go maybe and look back at some of those stories. You talk to those people, who were relying on that funding and lost it 10 years ago, and then how did they adapt then? And so you can kind of compare that situation to now as a solution.
We're going to get to the Q&A in just a couple of minutes, so I want to pivot to, we promised some solutions and some hope and some good news stuff here. So I'd like you each to, tell us about a good news story that you're working on, or that solutions-based story, or something that you're working on or that you've done recently. Why don't you start, Bridget?
So I had shared this before. I wrote a story for U.S. News and World Reports about climate resiliency on public school playgrounds and what states around the country are doing to kind of make sure that these playgrounds are going to withstand hotter temperatures. And that was a really kind of uplifting story, and it's kind of been building on. There's been a law that's been going through Congress for the past couple of terms. I'm sure it won't go through this year. That would give more states even more funding to do this. But California is planting a lot of trees. They're expanding their outdoor classrooms. There's a school outside of Chicago that got a lot of money to completely redo its playground. There's schools here in New York State that have done the same thing. And it's really heartening to see how people are preparing the next generation for what's going to be happening.
So we've had a climate voice, a video series that we've run for the last year. It's called Climate Voices, and it highlights people in the community that are making efforts, to combat climate change by doing things like pointing out the importance of peatlands, or talking about the importance of educating people on the subject of climate change. And so, those stories were done by Chloe Bennett, our last climate reporter. So now I'm working on one now, and actually the subject's right back there, Evan Beach.
All right.
Evan, he's a...
Round of applause for sources. We love sources.
So we have a source we have a lot of sources in the room. And so Evan, he when he was 7 years old, he led a climate rally in his driveway, and then he was asked to do something similar in the city of Plattsburgh, and so he led 200 people through the city of Plattsburgh, and gave a speech before the climate rally. And so, in this video, I'm kind of highlighting some of the things he's done, and kind of showing that there's hope out there. There's people, really working to make a change.
As part of our climate change series for the year, we've been doing these things called climate diaries. And I went out to a farm in St. Lawrence County in DePoyster, and it's Bittersweet Milkweed Collaborative Farm. And Kia Beth Bennett is running the farm now, and they've been tracking bird migration, when the frogs come out of the water, every thing you can imagine an animal or a plant moving on this farm could do. They've been writing it down in this book that is so water stained. It makes the best crinkle sound. And I think it goes to show that people have been paying attention to climate change for so long, and there are people who so genuinely care about this and have the passion for monitoring and providing that data to people like us and other scientists, so much so that I know that farm is now helping out the Bobolink project, which is out of Mass Audubon, which is trying to make more places in the St. Lawrence Valley and Champlain Valley grassland bird species habitat. And they now have all this data from this one farm where birds have been living in the grasslands for a long time. And it's just exciting.
It really speaks to the advantages of reporting in a rural area. Like, so many people are so much more tied and connected to, you know, what they see out their backyards and what they see out in the woods. One question. So let's get to. We have officially 10 minutes left. I've heard that like maybe we can go over. So we'll see. Another question that I had here, then maybe this will just sort of naturally come up, is what we see as the role of media in climate change, and maybe y'all will ask us that. But let's open it to questions. You already got yours. You already got yours. Okay. Mm-hmm. So is the question? Okay, all right. Okay, well, let's go to a question. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I hate that response of the idea of like, oh, the future generation is going to solve this problem. It shouldn't be their job to solve it. It shouldn't be ours either. I think that conversations about climate change ultimately come down to what your values are, and my values aren't going to change whether or not we were living in this time or a time when we didn't have to worry about it. My values are still going to be the same. And so I'm going to figure out how to live my values to the best of my ability in a world that sometimes makes it very difficult to do that unless you have unlimited money. So in that sense, I don't focus a lot on guilt. I also think that it would be a little arrogant of me to think that I know what the future is going to be, whether that future is good or bad. And so I really focus a lot more on how do I create joy in my day-to-day life? How do I create it in my daughter's life? How do I raise her to be a good person?
I do think that that's like the value of having, these climate diaries or climate voices like the Explorer has, of, having a, overall ending up with a big body of community voices out there, like documenting in real time what they're seeing, right? And then you have the science that goes along with that. Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not.
I was on at 6 o'clock this morning, and I didn't.
We'll start with the weather.
I
We'll start with the weather.
The weather?
Yeah. All right. Next question. Yes.
So, just wanted to know how.
Yeah, I think, our managing our airtime is a complicated thing, and also maybe not like the best use of getting the word out, because people listen to the radio, but also people are online and on social media a lot. So we would have a conversation with you about what's the best way, for us to use to talk with you, right, about the issues that you care about, and put them in the best format that we would have. And usually, we don't do many live roundtables. It takes a lot of time. It's hard to get people there in person. But we're very open. We do want you to contact us, and then have a conversation. And we have our journalists are experts in how to tell your story, right? Does that answer your question? Okay, good. So it's a little bit. Let's go in the back. The community voice, the climate voice.
Really, conferences?
Conferences are a really good one.
It's like, all of you.
There are many sources, past and present, in this room for sure.
Also, so we were doing the texting club at NCPR, and we gathered a bunch of observations of what people have been noticing over time with climate change. You'll love that. But also a way to.
Bridget, anything to add to that?
Well, I was going to say also, you get story ideas from reading other publications. I get a lot of my story ideas from reading Nature magazine, or
NCPR.
NCPR every morning. Going to climate resiliency meetings.
And I think probably your media agency.
I'll just say that we did a story last winter, I believe, about about the snowmobiling, about there being no snowmobiling on the Tuck Hill last year, and our reporter asked, point blank to whoever the snow groomer or the snowmobile club director or whatever, after they were sort of teasing it out and sort of was coming around to the big question, like, do you agree that do you believe in climate change? And there's this long pause in the tape. And he was a little squishy about it, but, you know, it was recognizing, it was asking the question. And I think that we have to be talking to people where they're at, talking about the issue, right? What what is the thing that they can observe that are problem, whether it's the culverts. We want to do an entire year-long series on culverts now. I'm serious. So culvert people, we're coming for you. You know, I think meeting where people are at and the things that they observe in their lives, and us being proactive in going out there and talking to people and getting out of our little offices and, you know, our like regular sources is the most important thing. You know, we can't change people's minds, but we can have conversations. We can, you know, put their views on the radio or in print. We can bring the best science we can to that, but we have to show up is, I think, the most important thing.
I also think just providing real world examples from your neighbors about how they're being affected. I was interviewing a farmer who has to make a bunch of climate change adaptations because it's so rainy now in Cape Vincent that they can't get the cows in and out of the barn without it creating a mess. And I think anyone can understand the hardship people will face when it comes to economic impacts from climate change. And I think humanizing these stories and giving people good examples about how their neighbors and themselves are going to face problems goes a long way in connecting us together, bringing us together.
I think it's safe to say that all of the media outlets that we are reporting with or from have 2 minutes left. That's a sign. That's official right there. Are soliciting, would love to have, you know, those stories and are looking for tips. You know, you see tip lines in every, you know, media outlet. We do what's called, Catherine referenced it, a texting club where we're trying to we get people to sign on to this thing where we can text we have 600 people on there now, where we can text them so we can ask them, and, you know, we'll be asking them in the near future, like, have you been affected by, you know, changes in the federal workforce? And they would reply back, and, you know, we would sort of build those stories that way. But, you know, like the Explorer has a tip line, you know, U.S. News, Grist, yeah. But send them. I mean, it really, you know, so much. A lot of people say, like, what is the media doing to cover this, right? And we can't do anything without you, right? Without citizens saying, like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're seeing. You know, we report on what people are doing more than anything. Yes, we put facts to that. We do research. We do investigations, all that stuff. But, like, you know, we're reporting on what other people are doing. Yeah, I think you had your hand out. last song, last question. Yeah. Yes, please.
I mean, I think that everyone, for the most part, who works in news media is very aware of that and is really trying to reach out to different people. When I was doing the work from my book, I actually got some pushback from my agent when she was like, well, there's only like 2 men in this book. And I was kind of like, so? I was like, if I'm talking about people raising kids and who also happen to be like a climatologist, I'm going to look for the mom versus like looking for the dad. That's just like what I'm going for. And to be honest, not a lot of female climatologists have been featured in the past. But I think like it was a good note. She was like, you might actually need to include some white men in this book because there really aren't any. So sometimes we can go the other direction, but I think that most people are very aware of it and are really trying.
We have a source project where we're trying to document the different demographics that we're reaching, that we're putting on the radio and putting in our web stories. We think the texting club is actually a lot more democratizing in a lot of ways. So that is one other way. And actually the Explorer and NCPR have a shared reporter who focuses on diversity issues in the Adirondack Park that, hopefully you all will have heard already or will hear, David Escobar. Okay, time is up, quoth the clipboard. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming.
Well, let's give another round of applause to this great panel. Thank you all, David, Catherine, Mike, and Bree. And you guys can come on down. We're just going to wrap up real quick. We'll grab those chairs out of the way. Give us 2 seconds. Look at all these heart and souls that stay right to the end. I love it. Very good.
Get Matt up here too. All right. So Jen and I are going to just take literally a minute or so to wrap up so that you can get out and enjoy your blue drink ticket out in the lobby. So first, I'm just going to give some thanks. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here today and for your curiosity, your interest, and your energy that you brought to the day. It was amazing. I also want to thank our sponsors, in particular our platinum sponsor, 80K Solar, as well as our other sponsors listed up here. This conference couldn't have been possible without them, so we'll give them a thank you. Also, I want to thank our speakers again. They were all amazing. I wish I could have gone to every workshop, and I hope you all enjoyed them. There is an evaluation Jen will talk about, and we really want your feedback so that we can continue to make this a great event. I'd love to thank the Wild Center staff. It's amazing. I showed up here at 7:30, and they all just sprouted out of the ground like flowers and made this magic happen. So round of applause for the Wild Center. Yep. And then I also want to give a personal thanks to Sunita and Jen, my partners in crime, for this event and the amount of time that they put into this. Literally within 6 or 8 weeks, we put this conference together, and it was a whirlwind, but it was really amazing. So thank you both for your partnership. It was great.
Oh, and Zoe too. Okay. I'm realizing I'm between you and the drink. So this is an invitation to action. So first of all, I wanted to just do a shout out to upcoming events. So you can take out your phone, take a quick snapshot of this. And we will also be sending out a follow-up email with links to this and to some other things. So look for that in the next couple of days. But there's a lot of stuff happening. So please don't think of this as like a one-off event. This is the beginning. I mean, so it's really a catalyst. There's so much good stuff coming, including up in Canton at the Sustainability Day, another Acorn listening session, both the ANCA conference and the ARC conference, both happening in Lake Placid. Amazing events to reconnect and connect with folks, APA planning, and then we'll be hosting an event on wildfires later in the summer. So please take your time. In that email, we're also going to send you, and Sunita mentioned this, the Acorn survey. If you haven't done it, we'll send language so that you can do it and then send it to 5 of your friends. We would love that. And keep an eye out for the executive summary of this work. We'll be compiling. As you know, we are taking notes throughout the day and all the sessions. We're going to be working on this and creating this roadmap to resiliency, which will be done sometime in the spring, and we'll get a report out there. And finally, please give us the opportunity, please give us feedback. Like, we want to do more stuff like this. We want to convene people at the intersection of science and society. That's what we do here at the Wild Center. That's what we do with our partners. We really want to provide more opportunities for us to all come together. You know, and this is just, I want to leave with a little quote from one of my favorite books called All We Can Save, because it felt really resonant today. But they write, the work at hand is hard and uncertain, yet we're all here, right? We have to roll up our sleeves. Everyone has a role to play. And we hope that if you haven't found yours already, the kaleidoscope of work, voices, and stories that were heard here today and that you hear every day in the communities where you live and work will help you envision what your role is. You are so needed. So if you haven't felt invited in the past, you're invited now. We warm welcome. And also please note that if you haven't been thanked in the past for the work that you've been doing, thank you. Because that work every day, this is why I get up in the morning, this is what gives me hope, especially when things are uncertain and hard, is moments like this with all of you. So I really am grateful for the time that you took to be here today and be with all of us. So this is, oh, thanks, Evan. Okay. I'm now tearing up. Thanks, Evan. And thank you. Enjoy. Head out. There's drinks and snacks for you all out there. We look forward to being in touch, and take care. Safe travels home, and happy almost spring.